I got a bunch of yarn, and I got some swatches in that yarn, and I didn't spend terribly much money at all. First up is from my LYS in Germany, where I picked up a sweaters quantity. Those of you who have watched this before know what's coming. For €56, €53, 50, somewhere in there. Of Gilliatt, which is 100% non-superwash merino, and it is so wonderfully squishy. It is beautiful. It's not as squishy as, say, WIS's The Croft. It's slightly less squishy than that because it's a semi-woolen spun, which gives it properties of both, which I have to be honest is kind of interesting to me. So it's not as squishy as some worsteds, but it's still really squishy considering how smooth it is. Yeah, it is a very round yarn. It cables beautifully, as you will see soon. The heathered colors of this are made with two kinds of merino, sheep, one of which is a French merino from Arles, if that's how you pronounce it. And the other, for the heathers, is a black Portuguese merino from Portugal. And it gives it, obviously, the most beautiful depth of color. And I'm curious to know whether this is all the dark colors, because if you look at like the salt and pepper, it's a paler. It's definitely, something's going on there. The color is almost exactly what I expected, but the black didn't really take the dye very well, so it's more of like a burgundy black than a straight up burgundy, a heathered burgundy. I'm not complaining. It's flipping beautiful. But if you are going for this colorway, it's good to know, because it's not quite as over-dyed as I would have expected. Anyway, I have no idea if this is from the new mill or the old mill. I don't really know where that stands. I suspect it's the old one, but I have no actual idea. So I've been swatching with this for the people sweater, obviously. So I've got two. So I've got two swatches. We got one. And we got two. You can see the drape difference. This is 2 stitches smaller, shorter, you know, less wide. Not shorter. And 1 size down in needles. And because of the stitch patterning and the ribbing and what have you, you can see just how big a difference. That's a, you know, easily 5-stitch difference, just from 2 extra stitches and a needle size down, which changes the fabric dramatically. I was really surprised. Both of these are blocked. I'm squishing a lot. I've spent a lot of time squishing because you know how there are some yarns where you immediately understand the yarn. You're knitting with it, you're like, oh, yeah, this is the gauge. Or, oh, no, this is not. I'm just immediately going down a needle size or up a needle size, and that's going to give me the fabric I want. And you're right. And you're not really sure why you know that. You just know that. This, I've had a hard time wrapping my brain around. I knit one swatch, and probably for 4 days sat around just kind of feeling it, because it didn't make a lot of sense to me. So now that I've been squishing them, and that I've blocked them, and that I've been squishing them again, I have a better idea of what's going on with this yarn. And even though when I did this one, I was pretty sure I was going to want to go down a needle size, it turns out I don't. Now, if I were doing stockingette, I would probably like it. This is on US 8s. This is on US 9s. I am a tight knitter. I'm usually one up from everybody else. I'm not a tight knitter, but I'm a tight knitter. So, the cable in this, it's, you know what? It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's slightly poppier, slightly that tighter cable. Do you know? I mean, obviously, it's a tighter gauge, but I like the cable at the smaller gauge, and I probably like the stockingette at the smaller gauge, but the twisted rib at the smaller gauge is too stiff. It has very little. You can kind of see the difference. Maybe, can you see the difference? Yeah, I mean, you can really see the difference in drape when I do that. Right? Given how much twisted rib, I mean, the whole side portion and then the underside of the arms, but for the cable, is all twisted rib. And I think this would be too tight. I think it would end up with a little bit of an armor kind of a feeling to the sweater. So I'm going to go with this one. I don't actually know. I think I checked pattern gauge last night because I felt like that was something I should know, because I don't really care, right? I'm going for fabric. I want to figure out what the sweater wants to do, what the yarn wants to do, and then I'll make any adjustments I need based on gauge. So I think my stitch, I was between, she's between these two. And she's on Japanese needles, so there is a size needle between these two. That's probably what I'd use, if I'm honest. Get a little bit more pop in the cable and not really lose much flexibility in the ribbing. I don't have that option. I'm not in Japan. So I think I am going to go with the 9s for this sweater, and I will have to. Oh, my row gauge ended up on the 9s. My row gauge is perfect, but my stitch gauge is off by a little. So I'll accommodate for that. It's a raglan, very easy to stop short and get fewer stitches if you need to. So I'll probably just do one fewer cable repeat on the raglan to get the same look, slightly shorter. We'll see how that rolls out. It'll also depend on, oh, if my row gauge is right, so it'll depend on how, I'll have to do a measurement and see how deep the arm side is, and if I can go up one to get fewer stitches, I will, and if not, I might have to still cable it but not be increasing, which will change the slope. No, I can always do a, where would I decrease one? Probably in the garter. That's the tricky part. I mean, raglans are so easy to modify that I don't really worry about it, but when you have something that's all over textured, if I want to keep the increase, so the slope of the raglan the same, you can cheat that. If you don't want to increase anymore, you can cheat that by decreasing somewhere else that it would be invisible for all intents and purposes, so that you are keeping the slope but not changing your stitch count. But there's nowhere to do that. I'm not sure where I'd do that. I'll have to have a think. I'll have a think about it, because it would, obviously, if you decrease one inside twisted ribbing, it's going to be really obvious, right? That's not a good option. So I'll have a think about it. I'm also messing around because for whatever reason, and it's just me being weird, I don't really love the look of garter. It's not a thing that appeals to me. I really like the look of seed stitch. And if this doesn't work, I might insert a close-up. So if you see a weird cut, that's what this is. I prefer the seed stitch, right? I think the seed stitch looks better. But what you might notice is the width difference because you've got a very significant row gauge difference between cabling and twisted rib. Twisted rib is really inflexible. It's twisted, so it can't move around as much as stockinette can. Cabling, everything is pulling, right? You're moving stitches around in a much larger way, and so you always get cable pull, right, that you have to account for, but you also get a certain amount of loss of height with cables. The garter, as you can see on the top, does a really good job of accounting for that, right? It gives you this cool little thing that just, and it looks really cool on the finished projects. I really like that detail. That being said, I prefer the look of that seed. So I think what I'm going to end up doing, now that I know I'm using the 9s, is swatching a full thing with the garter, or with the seed stitch, and seeing how that actually drapes and falls when it's entirely seed stitch, so that I get a better idea, because this is changing everything because of the garter, right? So I need to get a better idea visually, I much prefer the seed. Although it could be too unpoppy. That's a good... Everything is very level, except for those receded pearls, so you get a really nice rhythm of texture. The seed is not quite so dramatically three-dimensional as the garter is, so I'm wondering if that might be a difference too. So, one more swatch to decide about that, and then I will be embarking on the people, and I'm very excited. But that's not the only thing that I got from my LYS in Germany. The other thing that I got was the best 13 euro I've ever spent. I picked up Woolen Berlin's, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that because it's got a slash over a U, not an umlaut, a slash, I don't know. It is 100% Lithuanian linen. And I have no idea what the difference between a wet spun linen and a non-wet spun linen is. I'm sure that I could Google that and learn, and I probably will at some point. But what I do know is that this stuff is already soft. So if you sometimes pick up a skein of linen and it's a little bit stiff, right? It's a little bit crunchy. I mean, this is also a super light fingering weight. This is very, very, very light fingering. I'm probably not going to be able to catch that on camera. I've pulled out a little loop for you to see. It is a very light fingering weight. I have not swatched with this yet, so I don't know how it's going to behave, but I suspect I'm going to be knitting this on pretty small needles. But that's okay, because I have a fetish for linen. I love this stuff. I could wear it. I do actually wear it every day. I'm wearing linen right now as my pants, so I pretty much wear linen every day. I don't mind going down needle size for a t-shirt, or it might be a Lydia 2.0. Wet spun linen. So, I don't know what the difference is, but normally you would pick up, and it would be a little bit stiff. This one's already out a little bit. Gonna wiggle some yarn at you. It's floppy. There's nothing stiff going on here. It's already the kind of soft you would expect from linen that you've been, that you've reknit 5 times, or that has been in your closet for a while. So I'm excited to work with this, but it's for slightly later because I got like 8 million things to do. So far, 50-something euro, 13 euro, shipping from my LYS internationally to the United States, where I am back at again. And by the way, if anything about this setup is weird, feel free to comment below. Shipping was 11 euro, which we don't complain about at all. So that brings us up to 80 euro, 2 sweaters, 2 garments. Whether that will be a Lydia 2.0 or a t-shirt, I don't actually know. The next thing that I got was some Holst. Let's see if I can do this. Holst Garn Coast, which I've been knitting with and am really quite in love with. It's so soft that I'm having a hard time tensioning the yarn, which is crazy to me. I really can't feel it in my fingers. It's not really there. So I'm occasionally having problems actually sort of maintaining an even texture. My hands do what they're doing, but I feel like it's just sliding through. And I don't wrap when I tension, so that could be a thing too. But I got all these beautiful colors of Holst Garn. I did make a tactical error, as you can see, if I can get them back in my hands. The top 2 colors are really similar. Now, normally Holst does a very good job of doing colors, but these 2 looked just enough different than they are. Like, just that little bit more contrast. They're practically the same color. They're really practically the same color. They are probably dyed with, one is just slightly darker than the other. Tonally, they look almost identical. Which I really like, but is not going to work. So the first sweater I'm making out of this is the Gramps Revive by Isabel Kramer. And that's a sort of oversized drop shoulder, deep V-neck cardigan with a stripe. and then a third color at the hem. I was going to do these 3 colors. I don't know that there's enough contrast in those. There's enough I love those 2 colors together. But then, I don't know. It's a little, I don't know. I don't know. We'll see where I get there. I have another option. Actually, I have a couple other options. I could, this color is called Cocoa. Its similar partner is Fig. The beautiful, whatever color this is, sort of raspberry-y, is Cassis, which is really the thing it is. And the green, the sagey green, is Moorland. Now, I could dip into the Moorland and do that. I've got some leftovers that I've been looking at. I could do that. I mean, it's a really thin stripe. It's 6 rows or something like that. So it's more just to give you a bump of contrast. I'm leaning towards this one, but I also kind of like the green, so I don't know. We will see when I get there. Swatch. I have a swatch of this. So, little baby swatch, because this is one of those yarns that I completely understood it the moment it got on my needles. It made total sense. Oh, the yarn is 55% lamb's wool, 45% cotton. Yes, that's correct. And 383 yards, or 350 meters, for 50 grams. And one of these skeins, now I bought this on sale, which almost feels ridiculous because Holst Garn is so very budget friendly to begin with. But I happened in October to be, you know, poking around and noticed that it was on sale. And so for the t-shirt or tank top quantity of Moorland that I got, and the Gramps Revive giant oversized cardigan that I bought, 3 skeins, 4, 5, 6, 7 skeins of yarn. I actually paid as much for the shipping as I did for the yarn itself, because it was $15 for shipping and $15 for 7 skeins of yarn, which is, you know, I mean, that's just bonkers good price. It is a light fingering, but it blooms well. This is knit on US 4s. It has just the most incredible drape. The only difference pre and post block for me was that it filled the stitches out. I didn't get a gauge change, although I realized after having blocked it that it was still really cold here. I only had cold water running at the time, so I just threw it in a cold water bath, and it does want you to block with sort of lukewarm, not warm, but warmer water, and that might make a difference. I'm not really worried about it in terms of the cardigan, because it's a giant cardigan, so if it's a little bit more giant, there's no big deal. But to know, something to know if you choose to knit with this yarn, which I do recommend you do, because it's really pretty and soft. It's really pretty and soft. So the only real difference was how, here is the Gramps Revive cardigan that is started. And this is, I don't know if you can actually get a sense of that. It's simply more transparent. It's just that hair more, maybe if I do that. It's just a hair more filled in, right? You can see, I mean, the drape on this. It's going to be a woolen kiss, this sweater, which is exactly what I want. And it really, it's just ridiculously soft. It's hard to wrap my brain around how soft this is. And I'm kind of excited to knit. Knitting is what I do, not look. Although sometimes if you have a baby stash going on, which is unusual for me to have this much yarn at one time, I feel like I'm looking a lot. But that's okay. Is there anything else you'd want to know about the Holst? I'm using 4s. Maybe that's the only other thing. So other people might use 3s, but I'm using 4s. So that means we are up to a little over €100. Which brings me to the thing I almost forgot. In fact, forgot in the title, which is amusing because it's about no longer forgetting. Because I have a problem counting rows. I have a big problem counting rows. I am normally a paper. I like to jot notes on a paper. And so therefore it makes sense to keep count of rows when I need to on a piece of paper. Do I remember to do that? Almost never. No. I'll go, and then I'll go if I'm doing, I'll just keep going and be like, oh, that's 2. Oh, that's 3. And then I'll mean to write it down, and it just never happens. I also use Knit Companion for patterns, but do I ever remember to push the little row plus button? No, no, I don't. Or maybe a little bit more often, but I don't. So knowing that I'm about to embark on the people sweater, where I really am going to want to keep track of rows, because I think I'm mostly going to, most of it is pretty obvious, but for this on the sleeve and the front crazy cable pattern, I'm going to need to know where I am in terms of, because I'm not going to be following all of the charts around and around in circles. Although it would be kind of fun. I was thinking about how could I set up one of those, you know, those like tech scenes where you have the guy with the computer monitor or the girl with the computer monitors like in a big circle around them. I kind of want a giant knitting chart thing surrounding me. I don't really know how I do that, but I kind of want to try. If I don't do that, I need a way to keep track of my rows. And this has been something I've been looking at for a couple of years, and I finally caved and bought it. This is the KnitPro row counter ring, and it's already working. So the thing that I like about this, and you can wear it on whatever finger you want, but what I've noticed already is that, because I used it when starting the Gramps Revive, for just to measure, yeah, because measurements are somewhat imprecise, so once I know how many rows I have, I can repeat that on my different fronts and know that I'm not mismeasuring, because I do mismeasure a lot. Or I'll forget. The other thing I do is I put a stitch marker where something starts, because you can't always tell, right? You can't necessarily see that this is the row that was split because of the way, you know, this rolls out. This is the same row. Would you ever sort of tell that? No, you really, I mean, you could, but you really can't. It's hard. So I throw a stitch marker in about 60% of the time. I remember to do this, and then can count my rows. I forget. I'm too busy knitting. But what I like about this is that it's a presence on your finger, and so now when I go to knit, if this isn't on my finger, I notice its absence, which is a reminder to myself to put the stupid thing on, which I have done every single time and have successfully been using this almost every time, because you're knitting and you get to the end of a row and your hands are right there. There's no movement. There's no nothing. So the only downside about this thing is that it costs €20 in Europe, pretty much everywhere. I did not buy it in Europe because I was confused about the sizing, so I wanted to put it on my finger. So I bought this at Webb's. So I paid $30.79, which is a good amount more expensive. That's, 40% more expensive. But if I got the wrong one, I can return it. Was it worth the, $8 difference? Yeah, because I might have gotten the wrong one. I think you kind of have to use it for a little bit to know how you're going to actually roll out with it. Or maybe I just have weird fingers. I don't know. But this brings us up to €121. If my math was correct, it might not be. I was being a little casual about that. But that's okay. Yeah. So €121, a tool that I'm really excited about, and 4 sweaters, and probably some leftovers. If I can make socks out of these, oh my god, they'd be the nicest summer socks ever. I really actually kind of want to purposefully have enough left over to make socks out of this. And I don't care that I don't have needles small enough and would have to buy them. Don't care. So I got a lot of knitting to do. I'm pretty psyched, and I didn't spend a lot of money to do it. Hope that inspires you. Maybe piques your curiosity. Maybe makes you go out there and hunt a little bit. Find some cool new yarn. Thanks for watching. See you later.